Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because this is the full, unabridged deep dive exploration into the psychology of high-stakes decisions. Today, we are tackling one of the most insidious cognitive biases there is, anchoring bias. Simply put, anchoring bias is the tendency for our brains to rely too heavily on the first piece of information we receive, that initial anchor, when making subsequent decisions. Your brain is essentially taking the first number it sees, treating it as the definitive's truth or baseline value, and then adjusting from there, even if that initial number was completely arbitrary. Think about negotiation. If the first price thrown out, say, $10,000, is ridiculously high, your subsequent counteroffers will be anchored to that initial inflated number, making you feel like even a decent deal is actually a discount. This isn't about faulty math. It's a cognitive shortcut. Our brains are designed for efficiency, and sometimes that efficiency leads us straight into predictable psychological traps. The key takeaway here is that the first number doesn't just suggest a range, it often dictates your perceived reality of value. So, how do you break free? You have to become aware of the anchor before it even drops. This requires a massive mindset shift. When you enter any high-stakes conversation, whether it's buying a car, negotiating salary, or even deciding on dinner, you must mentally prep for the anchor. First, you need to establish your own internal anchor. Before they even speak, know your absolute walk-away point. This is your non-negotiable baseline. If you don't know your floor, everything they say, even if it sounds amazing, will feel like a massive win because you have no reference point. Next, you need to actively challenge the anchor when it's presented. Don't just accept the first number, immediately ask why, or how was that calculated? This simple act of skepticism forces them to justify their starting point, which often reveals the true margin they are working within. Let's talk about salary negotiation, because this is where anchoring costs people thousands of dollars. If they ask, "What are your salary expectations?" and you give a number that is too low, that becomes the anchor for the entire conversation. Instead, practice the technique of deflection or providing a broad, high-end range based on market data, not your current need. When you anchor high and justify it with market research, you force them to adjust their expectations upwards, making your eventual counteroffer feel like a massive concession on their part. This principle applies to everything from buying a house, where the listing price is the anchor, to subscription services that try to make you feel like you're missing out. Be wary of the bundle deal. They anchor you with the total cost, and then make individual components seem ridiculously cheap by comparison. To combat this, you must mentally deconstruct the bundle. Ask for itemized pricing and evaluate each component's value independently. Another common trap is that limited time offer. They anchor your urgency and emotional decision-making process, making you feel that if you don't buy now, you lose out. The antidote to urgency is radical pause. When you feel that emotional spike, physically stop. Say, "I need time to review this." This breaks the anchor of immediate decision-making. Remember, anchoring bias is not a flaw in your logic, it's a predictable pattern of human psychology that smart people exploit for profit. The goal is to become the master of your own baseline, refusing to let external numbers define your worth or your value. When you understand that the first number is just a suggestion, not a law, you gain immense power in every interaction. So next time you feel pressured by an initial number, take 3 deep breaths. Remind yourself, this is just the anchor. And then, re-anchor your value based on objective reality. Understanding this bias is just the beginning of mastering your decision-making process. We're going to dive into loss aversion next week.